Hi everyone. Here question is convert following epsilon NFA to NFA using direct method. Here we have to convert epsilon NFA to NFA. What does this direct method says? Direct method indicates or shows two rules that we need to apply to convert epsilon NFA to NFA. What are those two rules? First, let's understand it. For example, if suppose there are two states Qi and Qj, and these states are having epsilon transition in between. Now, what are the two rules? One rule says that suppose there is an epsilon transition between the two states and another state, here suppose Qj, which is the target state. If this is the final state, then Qi becomes final. Simple one. If there is an epsilon transition between Qi to Qj, and if Qj is final one, then Qi becomes final. This is the first rule. What does second rule says? Second rule says that similar case, if there are two states Qi and Qj, and there is an epsilon transition between these two states, assume that Qj is final, and there are two more states, like for example I can say Q1 and I can say Q2, and there is a transition from this Qj to Q1, for example for symbol A and for symbol B. I explained in the first rule, if there is a epsilon transition between Qi to Qj, if Qj is final, Qi becomes final. This is the first rule. Second rule says that if there is a epsilon transition between Qi to Qj, then all transitions starting from Qj. For example, see, all transitions starting from Qj means Qj having transition for A, going to state Q1, Qj having transition for B, going to state Q2. See, this Qj having two transitions going to Q1, Q2. What the second rule says? All transitions starting from Qj, these two transitions starting from Qj will also start from Qi. For example, these two transitions are starting from Qj, these will also start from Qi. It means what? This Qj, in addition to this Qj, this will be replaced by Qi. For example, here like this. Or just for understanding, I am removing this Qj here. So transitions will be as it is. Only the source state will get added, not replaced. It means what? Qj to Q1, this A will be as it is, but Qi to Q1 will be added for A, like this, Qi to Q1. Similarly, Qi to Q2 for B, Qi to Q2 for B. And once you add this, then you can remove the epsilon transition. This is what a direct method says. Let's understand this and apply this to solve this question, then it will be more clear to you. Let me solve this example. While solving such kind of question, always start from the last state, or I can say last final state, here Q2. But before that, whatever is there, draw it as it is. For example, Q0 as it is, Q1 as it is, then Q2 as it is. Q2 is final, so here it also final. Then this is the epsilon, this is starting state as it is, this is the epsilon transition. All these self loops will be as it is. Q0 having self loop for 0, Q1 having for 1, Q2 having for 2. Then apply the rule. As I said, I will be applying this rule from the Q2. Then Q0 will be as it is, starting state. Then Q1 will be as it is. Then Q2 will be as it is. As Q2 is final, make it as it is. Whatever the existing transition, keep these transitions as it is. There will not be change in the existing transitions. At this moment, I will be writing this epsilon also. I have redrawn the same diagram as it is. How to apply the rule? Here Qi, Qj. Now here see Q1 to Qt having the epsilon transition. So I am writing here Q1 to Q2 having epsilon transition. Q2 is final, so I am making it final. Q2 having transition for 2, yes. First rule, if there is a epsilon transition between Qi to Qj, if Qj is final, here Q2 is final, then Qi, here Q1 becomes final. Same rule, if Qj is final, then Qi becomes final. here we made Qi final, so here Q1 becomes final, so I am making Q1 as a final. Existing transition will be as it is, no change. Second rule, all transitions starting from Qj. Here, if there is a epsilon transition between Qi to Qj, and all transitions starting from Qj will also start from Qi. Understand how to write this? First of all, write down Qj. Here Qj is Q2. Transition starting from Q2. Q2 having transition for 2 going to Q2. A transition will be self-proof or going to any other state. That doesn't matter. Transition is transition. So Q2 having transition to Q2 for 2. And here epsilon transition from Q1 to Q2. So all transitions starting from Q2 will also start from Q1. So simply replace this Q2 by Q1. Understanding? Then Q1 to Q2 having transition for 2. Then Q1 to Q2 having transition for 2. Once we apply these two rules, you can remove this epsilon transition. So let me remove it. Similarly, you can apply the same rule where Q0 to Q1 having the epsilon transition. Just for understanding, I am writing the same diagram as it is. In the exam, you can directly write down the answer. So Q1 we have just made it as a final. Then Q2 as it is given final. Then Q2 having the self loop as it is. This Q1 to Q2 having the transition for 2. Then Q1 having the self loop for 1. This epsilon transition is as it is. This Q0 having the self loop for 0. That is also as it is. Now, you might be thinking here Q1 is final, but it was not. Yeah, we have made it as a final to remove here epsilon transition. To remove this one, we have made it as a final by using the our given direct method rules. Now let's apply the same rules here. Where is the epsilon transition? There is an epsilon transition between Q0 to Q1. So write it down here as it is. Q0 to Q1 we have the epsilon transition. First rule, if there is an epsilon transition from Qi to Qj, and if suppose Qj is a final, then Qi becomes final. Here Q1 is final. You might be thinking it was not. Yeah, it was not, but while removing this, we have made it as a final. So we have to consider that one also. So Q1 is a final. At this moment, Q1 is final and there is a epsilon transition. So Q0 will also becomes final. So let's make this Q0 as a final. Second rule, all transitions starting from Q1. So which are the transitions starting from Q1? Q1 having transition to Q2. Thus write it down. Q1 having transition to Q2. For which symbol? Symbol is 2. Q1 to Q2 symbol is 2. Q1 to Q1 symbol is 1. So I am writing it as it is. So there are two transitions from Q1. Q1 to Q2 and Q1 to Q1. I have written like this. Now rule says that if there is an epsilon transition from Qi to Qj, then all transitions starting from Qj will also start from Qi. Similarly, if there is an epsilon transition from Q0 to Q1, then all transitions starting from Q1. Here are the two transitions. All transitions starting from Q1 will also start from Q0. So let's, for understanding, I am removing this Q1 here. I will be writing here Q0. Here I use the word in addition to that. It means what? Existing will be there. But in addition to that, I will be adding the transition from Q0 to Q2 and Q0 to Q1. So Q0 to Q2, for example, this is a transition from Q0 to Q2. Just for lack of space, I am writing here Q0 to Q2. For which symbol? Symbol is 2. Q0 to Q1. For which symbol? Symbol is 1. And once you apply these two rules, you can remove this epsilon transition. Then I am removing this. This becomes your final answer for NFA. If for understanding purpose, you can redraw it. It's not required in the exam. Just here as we are learning. So I am redrawing the same diagram. There are three states Q0, Q1, Q2. And what are the transitions already given, and whatever we have created while removing the epsilon transitions, that we can write here. For example, Q0 to Q1 there is a transition for 1. Then Q1 to Q2 we have transition for 2. Then Q0 to Q2 we have transition for 2. I have written like this. And this becomes our final NFA. that we converted from the given epsilon NFA to NFA using direct method, using the two rules. We will have one more example just to understand how we can apply the direct method rule to convert epsilon NFA to NFA in the next session. Thank you for watching.